What is up guys, Rerolling here with a new video, and today we're going to test XLFA. Well, a little bit more at least. So what we are going to do is we're going to check out some of the new roles, because as you know, on X tier there are new stats, and I've quite recently acquired this role. And this role is honestly, it's a little bit annoying, because it's skill damage, body protection, desperate momentum, defier, and pure flow. And if there wasn't desperate momentum, but the giant killer instead, this would have been the god role I've been waiting for. But as it stands, this role contains 3 of the new stats: body protection, desperate momentum, and pure flow, and thus gives us quite a bit of opportunity to test out those new modifiers. And I've gone away and done so already. Let's take a look at the descriptions, because of course we have those. When self is inflicted with an attribute buff, increase the final value of the buff effect by 33%. Body protection, yeah, is one of the stats I think where I spent the most of my thoughts on, and at the same time it is also the most difficult to test, because how shall I know whether I got a 10 speed buff or a 13 speed buff? Is that even worth testing? And then it ends up being stuff like, which buffs do even work? What is a buff? For LFA specifically, one of the more interesting things where by the way, I think this works, I can't really test, I think it does, is actually his ultimate skill, his active skill. This attack has a characteristic, Demon King's Might. As a Lord of Fear, Aspen deals harsher damage to the enemies who dare to challenge his majesty, which by the way is a very nice description. For bosses who cannot be inflicted with fear, Aspen deals 120% of the damage dealt by the skill to them and steals 30% of attack from them. And that should count as a buff, so buffing this by 30% is actually really nice. If that is now a higher attack steal, I don't know, I can't be sure. Next thing I thought about was actually the new Star Soul, because of course we have the new Star Soul, the Bloom Genesis Radiance, and maybe we check out the max version of it. And this of course has a ton of buffs. We have, for example, attack increased by 15%, damage reduction, speed, or dodge, which could be cool, and all of those could in theory be buffed by 15%. Well, if they count as a buff. Are buffs only like the attribute buffs, or is it anything that heightens our stats? That is like really a question. It's kind of tough to figure out, but such sources of stats could be really interesting. Same goes of course for Spectre. What about Spectre? Well, we have all of those things in here. And now you might say, well, energy, is that even a buff? Energy is actually like a stat. So you can get that as like a stat. A normal stat on your hero can be energy. Even the initial energy can be heightened. We saw this on Unimax. So it could be possible that this also counts, and would be fairly interesting, but it's also kind of tough to figure out. So at the moment, I just assume that it is good. It is kind of tough to do more. For other stats though, we can do a little bit more, and I kind of want to jump over Desperate Momentum at this point and go for Pure Flow, because Pure Flow is very interesting, and it is one of the stats where I could quite quickly figure out that it works and that it is quite good. When self is inflicted with control effect, you reduce its duration by 1 round. And this is pretty cool. We saw this before, I think at the earliest time it was on Amun-Ra, and it was on Amun-Ra as a normal stat. You can see it there, rounds of being controlled -1, that is quite literally the same effect, and it's in here as a passive skill. And this was really good. Back then on Amun-Ra, my god, not being able to control her properly was really insane. And the reason for that is most control effects in this game last for 2 rounds. That is just the thing. There are some weaker control effects that last for 1 round. Those are rather rare, and the implications of a control effect only lasting for 1 round are quite insane, because you only really get to harm the enemy with a control effect when you are faster than they are, if the control effect lasts only for 1 round. Because what does it mean? A control effect lasting for 1 round will go away at the end of the same round that is inflicted on. So if you were slower than the enemy, well, the enemy already attacked, and if you CC them then for the rest of the round, for most of the CCs it really doesn't matter. So that already made it strong. But now the thing is, what would happen if you have it for 2 rounds? And I mean, we have Pure Flow now for 1 round, and we have another source of that same effect actually, and that is the PDE core. And the PDE core says at the beginning of each battle reduces the duration of any control effects inflicted on self and 2 random allies by 1 round. And you can buff that by upgrading the core liberation, then it's 5 random allies. And thus we have this effect 2 times. And the question by the people was, does it count? Is it like really 2 rounds? And the experiment that I did was we can just attack Bossanak here. And they have a Wukong in their team. And Wukong has quite the interesting effect. The Wukong effect, I think it's on this one if I'm not wrong. Yeah, there we have it. To all enemies inflicts 500% attack of Divine Retribution with a 100% chance to inflict Fragile and an 80% chance to inflict stun for 1 round. This gets upgraded by the Noble Sublimation to 2 rounds. And then we have a normal stun that lasts for 2 rounds, and it's pretty reliable in the way it's inflicted. And of course, as we have Destiny on this guy here on Bossanak's account, we can clearly see that there is also this Noble Sublimation here. So this means that if I attack with an LFA, he can be CC'd. He could be stunned. If he's stunned, we know, well, it is working. Didn't get stunned this time. I mean, it's an 80% chance. We don't always get CC'd. Does he get stunned? There we go. He is stunned. And usually this is quite reliable. It's a little bit unfortunate that we had to see him not get stunned here. Usually you can see, well, let's go for a 4th time. Then we probably have 3 out of 4. Yeah, 3 out of 4 times he got CC'd there. And now the trick is we put PDE in this team too. And we activate the core. And if those 2 stack, and if the +1/-1 round CC and the pure flow do stack, then LFA can no longer be stunned. Then we will see 0 out of 4 stuns. And while we could still be, I mean, you can see we got the hit there, we got the fragile, we didn't get the stun this time. Big damage incoming as well. It's kind of funny. He's not that bad in PvP actually if you have a ton of X tier stats on him, it turns out. Again, no stun. This time also not on PDE. Big hit. Of course we get defeated because we only have 2 heroes next time. And again, no stun. There again, PDE also kind of didn't get stunned. She's also quite resilient or resistant to CC. But we can see LFA really doesn't get CC'd at all anymore by this Wukong, and thus we can clearly assume that Pure Flow really does stack with the PDE core, and this essentially makes us immune to all control effects that last for 2 rounds, which is pretty insane. The thing here though, and that is really the question, what happens when you get inflicted with such a CC? Does it inflict the CC or does it not inflict the CC? And if you have -2 rounds, because, well, it would inflict a CC that lasts for 0 rounds, so immediately would be dispelled. It wouldn't even last to the end of the round. So what is in this situation? And that is something where I have to honestly say I couldn't really clearly figure this out right now. I'm still searching for a good experiment to do so, like something where I can test this. And that is still the point where I'm in the testing and looking at it, but already like not being able to be inflicted with 2 rounds duration CCs really is insane. It makes you immune to so much, really. And let's look at a few examples of that. That is TBB ult. There we have it again. 2 rounds CC. By the way, I tested a little bit with TBB, tried to see whether or not she would cast her ult again and stuff. It's a little bit wonky still. I'm still looking for this 100% test where I definitely know, oh yes, that was really inflicted. With TBB, it seemed like it still got inflicted. That's something that I want to say in advance. And here we have another example that is actually IHP, and we have the 70% chance to inflict a stun ecstatic soul on target for 2 rounds, so that also doesn't work anymore. And then lastly, one that I want to show you, basically all the CC from Starwing Jara doesn't apply anymore to this hero with Pure Flow and PDE core. So quite the insane stat. There are CCs that do apply though, and interestingly enough we can kind of take a step back in time, maybe a little bit more into the PvE direction here. And of course, today we don't really see Holmes Young anymore, but this guy actually can CC you for more than 2 rounds. We have shapeshifting for 3 rounds right here, and thus a pretty potent CC as well. Or the even more insane version, let's get to Sherlock. Inflict shapeshifting for 15 rounds. So against this guy, yeah, you definitely want to have Control Purify. Fun fact, back before shapeshifting was nerfed, it also blocked Purify, because Purify was considered a passive skill, and as Dove blocks passive skills, it also blocked Purify, and then you got Purify CC'd for 15 rounds, and the only way you could get out was receiving 3 active skills or basic attack, which was quite horrible back in the day. Today, gladly, they nerfed that and made it possible to be removed, but this would be a 15 round CC. So just some examples of CCs that get blocked. The newer ones tend to get blocked. There are no longer really commonly 3 round or longer CCs. I mean, it wouldn't really change a whole lot nowadays, but most of the CCs that do exist in the meta, they are for 2 rounds or for 1 round. We can see like right here, Silence Gag Order even for 1 round, and it gets enhanced to 2 rounds. So the Pure Flow combination is definitely a very interesting one. I think while even when the CC is still inflicted, I mean, can certainly have harming effects, but no longer be able to be really stuck with any CC is already great. And thus Pure Flow, definitely one of the best stats that we have currently in the meta, or that is currently available on X tier heroes. Then Desperate Momentum, before we go into that, that is also one, a little bit of a tough one. I tried to test that in PvE first, and I have to say in PvE it was really bad. When self HP is below 30%, there's a 25% chance to be immune to the direct damage taken. The question is, what is direct damage taken? I assume that is just hit damage, and that mark damage bypasses it, which is like a very common and tough to deal with damage in this meta. That damage over time bypasses it, and that is also something that in PvE really hits us. If we go into PvE, for example, I still didn't put any effort towards this in pipe to get past this Valk stage, but we can see as soon as Valk hits this LFA, still goes immediately into Unbending Will, and you can trust me, that happens sadly all the time. So really a little bit annoying, and something that you definitely do not want. And a lot of those enemies nowadays, they hit you straight into Unbending Will. Surviving certainly has become a bit more tough in PvE. It's no longer about this, oh, they reduced my HP by 20% or something. Does no longer really seem to be the case. Well, he's surviving pretty well, and there he's gone. Okay, this has really enhanced our survivability. Maybe on the second stage it actually seemed like it, but in the end we just died to the damage over time effect, and that won't change. Of course, we have to keep in mind there would be a way for me to theoretically go ahead and bypass a Valk stage, because we now also have burn, bleed, and poison immunity. And if I slap burn immunity on that, we would become immune to the burn damage of Valkyr. But really, this stat comes a little bit more into play in PvP. If we attack Bossanak again, and maybe let's add a DGN to this too, and let's add some random heroes. We can kind of go like this, I reckon. Yeah, that's all right. And let's see, the rest of the heroes usually going to die rather fast. We have some big damage. He nukes us with his IAE. Oh, pretty much gone. And what I notice is sometimes you just have this weird animation coming, and this weird animation, like the, can you see it? It already was on the screen. I saw it once. And you can see how he then just takes no damage. It's a little bit hard to spot, but if you keep your eye on him, there's a very small animation sometimes, where he gets no damage, and it can be really impressive. This stat can be really impressive, but there it was actually. But it certainly isn't like the super stat. It isn't the super stat. The problem that this stat has is a 25% chance to block damage. And while this is still great, it seemingly doesn't protect you against all of the damage. Some end of turn stuff, some DT stuff seems to be able to bypass it. And also, all of the hits or many hits are multi-layered, meaning you don't just have one hit in the ult, you have 3 or 4, or in extreme cases like RFW, you have, I don't know, it's 10 or something, it feels like it, hits in there, and that turns out to just not be, well, compensated or protected enough to really survive in PvP. Overall though, and that is something that I also have to say, with all those stats on there, LFA has become a lot more potent in PvP. So the combination of all of this together, that really has worked out. I had some impressive gameplay, some gameplays where I thought, okay, oh, now he's really carrying the fight. And I think this, if we go ahead and if we were to just take my IHP, which we could, and upgrade her to X tier and get some very, very good stats on her, like pure flow and everything, I think she could become quite a monster. And thus, I would say the balancing at the moment from stuff like Desperate Momentum is pretty good, because you kind of need a payoff for going for X tier, obviously, as a whale, and at the same time, it shouldn't be too insane. It's not like this Lord of Fear Aspen is now immune to all the damage, and Desperate Momentum triggers all the time and keeps him from dying. It's not the case, but sometimes it does, and it gives you a meaningful protection. Pure Flow is the same. I think if you fight a full Pure Flow enemy team, I mean, you still would be able to do stuff. You just wouldn't be able to really run a CC team anymore, I guess. At least not with the currently existing Transcendence heroes. The CC team just wouldn't work against a Pure Flow team, but you still get to do damage with TBB. You still get to do a lot of damage with TB, so that still works. Now for body protection, I also want to give this a little test. And for that, I would say we kind of go into Flame Shrine one time and try to attack there. And this is, of course, now an attack without Giant Killer. We don't have Giant Killer. We have Defier on this hero, which is really, really nice. I attacked this guy just because I didn't want this guy to fall below 70%. I didn't want to lose out on Defier. And yeah, so seeing whether or not any of this gets buffed, we don't see any effect or anything at the moment. There isn't like this, oh yeah, this buff got enhanced. There isn't a symbol for that. I mean, you kind of could have made like differently colored symbols maybe on the attribute bar, but then again, the attribute buffs and in general the buff system that we have on this global server is horrible, because we will never really know which buffs are on your hero, whether or not this, there is a precision buff, but at one point they just stopped adding new symbols, so there is no buff for all damage dealt, there is no buff for many of the things that are now existing, and at the same time, we have to say, ever since we got Transcendence heroes, we're also now at the point where, well, yeah, it wouldn't really work. At the same time, your heroes now have like 20, 30 buffs or something, and how do you really want to display this? Is certainly a difficult thing to do. So, in the videos where we cover all the heroes, where we cover like Dominator or something, you can see the buff bars don't nearly fill up quite as fast, and thus it's a lot easier to keep track of things. You can see, oh yeah, there is an attack buff on that guy, and usually he has like 1, 2, or 3 or something buffs, and here we don't really see that, and he somehow has a speed buff, and we don't even know from where. We aren't really sure. Probably it was MFF, but maybe SQH has set an RDT, I don't know. Could be the case. Maybe I've equipped the wrong node on my Destiny 5 node from LFA. It's gotten a bit crazy, let's be real about this. So, the thing is, with body protection, in theory, you should have a stat that is probably the most potent for PvE boss content on LFA, after Giant Killer. 100% straight buff, of course, very, very great. But being able to buff the buffs by 33% is already insane. We talked about things like the Star Alchemist Holmes Young attack buff, which was over 300% already. Imagine another 33% on that. It's another 100% attack buff easily right there. And with all the buffs in the meta, just like you see 22 attacks buffs stack there. That already absolute madness. And enhancing that by 33%, that is just great. So overall, I think it is a great stat, but how great is tough to test, and we will have to figure that out. But we can see the final damage numbers here in a sec. Let's see if we get like a good ult. I think we removed a fair bit of the HP of that boss. Not like in the past. I think those guys here can actually remove buffs from us, which is kind of unfortunate if you want to test the node that buffs. So yeah, a little bit bad in that regard, but we didn't have another boss, and obviously I didn't want to wait. I kind of wanted to show you some more gameplay of this X tier. Let's see the final damage numbers. No GK here. Pretty bad. It's horrible, actually. Oh, that is really quite horrible. Let's re-roll this and try to see if we can get a GK roll. Swap. Oh, what is this? It's as if somebody had prepared a roll with Giant Killer and body protection for our convenience. And there it is. And before somebody asks, some people thought like DH Games gave me that X tier. No, they didn't. Bloody hell, they don't give me anything. I re-rolled that myself. If you close the, by the way, if you want to save something like this, the way this works is you roll, and then once you have this selection where you can save and cancel, you just close your game. Without closing this window, you just straight up close your game, and the next time you go into this window, it will give you this. Am I happy with this roll? No. I just wanted a Giant Killer body protection roll for the start. This also has skill damage, so this is kind of not bad. We can now see for the next 3 tries where we land with this, but body protection Giant Killer was like the get-go that I wanted to, and the thing that I wanted to for this. For those puppets, it might be a little annoying. Let's just go for the final damage numbers. This video is long enough. We got 2E plus 17. It's not super good, I reckon. But let's try that again, just with the same team. And then, of course, 1.16. So seems to be better with Giant Killer than without. Just not something that we didn't expect. How Giant Killer body protection really turns out and how it works, 40 plus 17, really nice, is probably something we'll see in Star Expedition. Star Expedition is the most or the most researched boss in this game, and thus if we get like a decent increase out of it, we will probably see it right there. 7 got like a decent advantage here over place 2, so I reckon we did fairly well. How it really is, we'll still have to figure out. I reckon we still try to get the most worlds on here, because we can still improve this. Giant Killer body protection skill damage is not bad, but block and divine block, of course, 2 stats still on there that we kind of do not want. Faction rule, holy armor, divine block, that is not what we want to see. Hunter's Focus, Unyielding War Spirit. Unyielding War Spirit is the one we didn't really see that. That is the last one that I have to test. Lower self HP percentage, the higher self all damage dealt and all damage reduction, up to 25% all damage dealt bonus and 25% all damage reduction can be obtained. I'm not a big fan of this one. Though somebody said very correctly that it could be interesting on Wukong, because Wukong reduces his HP at the start of a round and could then, in theory, just get all of those buffs, which would be really nice. But for an LFA, yeah, he often just goes between alive and dead, and thus would probably not activate this too often. The re-rolling part, yeah, that is horrible. That is really horrible. I don't know. Getting a good roll, it will be so tough. Like Giant Killer, body protection, and then something on top is already difficult. But if you want 5 perfect stats, oof, tough one. Really tough one. And thus, I think still that DH should enhance this and should make this kind of into a better system, but so far they haven't done anything in that direction. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this little view on the new X tier stats. If we do another X tier at any point, I'm not too sure about yet. If we get a hero for it, yeah, I would probably have gone for Wukong if I'm honest, because I think he would be a very interesting S tier. The thing is, I would have to enhance him to SSS, and then to max SSS, and it would just be super expensive, because this upgrade alone costs 2 SS tiers, and I just don't see me doing it. So yeah, probably not for the moment. Maybe IAE, IHP, could see that, because it would be kind of a monster in PvP, but only if there is a cheap SSS tier in the market. We'll see. So with that, I wish you a great day. Make sure you check out the SG Hub, link down in the description if you are searching for some cheap starry gems. And other than that, we'll see us in the next one.